Alright, hi. We're going to tell you about the parts of the computer today.
Underneath it,
Today.
power supply.
So, this is the riser card. Beneath it is the power supply. Here is the fan, which under it contains the CPU. Here's the memory. Here is, well, under this you would find the video and sound cards. Here are the different drives. The wires that take power from the power source go to the drives. And here's the battery, the south bridge, and here's the cooling sink, which sort of just cools the motherboard, which is this thing. And those are the basic parts which we are going to cover today.
This is about drives. This is the disk drive, and this is the hard drive. This brings the digital information to the disk drive, and this brings analog information to the disk drive. To remove it, you would first remove this by pulling it out, and then this is the power supply. It gives power from this, and you would pull this out and disconnect this, and then you would take these green tabs and pull it out. To remove the hard drive, you would also do the same thing.
Hi, I'm Brian, and right now I'm going to talk about the power supply. The power supply in this computer is actually under this. This is called a riser card. And what you do is you pull out the riser card just by lifting the tab up, and this is where you hold the base, but we'll talk about it a little later. This right here is the actual power supply. We have a fan on it because it's supplying a lot of power and a lot of voltage, so it gets very hot very fast, and the fan takes away some of the heat. See all these cables? All these cables go to different parts, such as the bays and to the motherboard to supply power to the whole thing. Alright, and that is the power supply.
Alright, so now we're going to talk about the motherboard, which is located right here. Alright, first off, the motherboard contains a plethora of resistors, which are these little metal things that are just spread out all over. These black things would be the capacitors, which regulate the voltage, because if you have an uneven voltage, bad things happen to the motherboard, like, I don't know, it crashes. Here's the battery, which will save things while it's turned off. It's pretty low voltage, so it doesn't take up too much. The BIOS, which is the basic input and output system, would be right under the battery. Here's the south bridge, and here's the heat sink, which just sort of takes the heat out of the motherboard, which will get quite hot after it is used for a long time. Here's the power supply, which just comes from the power supply over here, and then it keeps the motherboard running at pretty very, very high voltage. Here's where the RAM would be located, just right next to the motherboard. I mean, right on the motherboard, sorry. And then here's the fan for the CPU. The CPU would be right under it. In addition, the motherboard is replaceable, meaning you don't need to go buy a whole new computer. You can just buy this motherboard, say, for $150. The motherboard itself has these resistors, but there are like 7 different levels on the motherboard, so it's just this complex chain of resistors that goes all over the place. The north and south bridges control data processing in the motherboard, and the BIOS sort of just gives the start instructions for the computer. So it's basically like ROM, it can't be changed.
This is the fan that cools off the CPU, which gets really hot really quickly. The CPU is like the brain of the computer, and to remove the fan, you would lift this lever up and pull it out and disconnect the cord. You can also remove the CPU by lifting up this lever and pulling out the CPU. It's very delicate. See all these little needles? If one breaks, then you need to get a new one. To put the CPU back, you have to line up this little triangle here with the top of the corner here, and you have to put all the little needles in the hole, and you put the lever back down.
Hi, now we're going to talk about RAM. That's random access memory. So basically, whenever you're running an application or you're saving a Word document, for the time being, it's saved on your RAM. Now the RAM's located here on the motherboard. It's this stick right here. Now to pop it out, you just pull on the 2 tabs, it kind of pops right out. Now, this is an older model of RAM, but the newer ones have more of these little spikes there, and they don't normally have, or they can have these chips on the back. Now, RAMs can be replaceable, but you just got to make sure that the RAM matches up with the model you have, and so if you can see that number right there, that matches the model of RAM that you need. Right, close. Oh, and you pop it back in just by aligning up the marks of the ridges. It kind of helps if you have everything wide open, so then you can just pop it back in.
Alright, so now we're going to talk about the riser card, which you just pull out as we showed by lifting up the lever and just doing a slight pull. Alright, so most new computers will not have the riser card. For this older version though, it would function as where you would put your expansions such as video expansion and video expansion and sound expansion. So that's basically just the function of the riser card.